Welcome. Today we're at the Marble Falls ISD Central Administration Office. Our guests are the Granite Shoals City Council candidates. Stay tuned as we ask them the hard questions. Welcome back. Today we have candidates for the Granite Shoals City Council races. I'd like to introduce our panel of guests. First, for place one, we have the incumbent, Shirley King, her opponent, Mr. Terry Hartman, and then for place three, we have Mr. Don Harrison and his opponent, Mr. Eric Tanner. Thank you all very much for being on our show today. We appreciate it. And just remember, you can catch the show on www.thepicayunetv.com or also on Northland Communications Channel 15. Let's get straight to our first question. We're going to go with place one candidates first. So Ms. King, you get the first question. What can the city do to encourage business and economic development?
Well, first of all, we need the voters to approve the bonds to build a new sewer plant. And once that happens, we need to encourage businesses to come here, and I would like to see the 131 acres that the city owns to be able to be developed into commercial property and for businesses for the citizens and for park and recreation uses.
Good. Well, thank you, Ms. King, for that answer. And now also for place one, Mr. Terry Hartman, what's your response, sir, to that question?
My response to that question is that we need a sewer treatment plant, because without it, businesses won't come in. And as you travel down 1431, there are a lot of derelict buildings on there. And something should be done about those, because if they get flat land, somebody that wants to put a business in takes one look and says, oh, there's a nice spot to build. And they don't have to look at a building that's falling apart literally on 1431. Also, it's for growth for the city. So we need the sewer treatment plant. It may be where it was originally scheduled, or it may have to go back up on 131 acres. Depends on what the voters do.
Thank you, Mr. Hartman. And now for place three, we're going to throw the question first to Mr. Don Harrison. Same question, sir. What can the city do to attract economic development and encourage business growth?
The thing is twofold. Number one, we do need a sewer treatment plant, and I would strongly encourage us taking a second look at the sewer treatment plant. I feel that the current sewer treatment plant is located on property and is not set up to benefit the majority of the citizens of Granite Shoals. We do need a city sewer treatment plant, but I do believe it should be on our own property. Secondly, we need to look at the code enforcement. In 5.5 years, we have not had one that I know of commercial operation that's in single-family residential shut down. We have contractor yards all over Granite Shoals. They've been overlooked. Nobody has looked at them. Those keep residents from coming in and building nice homes. That's the second thing, so that's twofold. Thank you.
Good. Well, thank you very much. And also for place three, Mr. Eric Tanner, how about your response to that question, sir?
Well, my response is that currently Granite Shoals derives its revenue from two primary sources: water sales and residential property taxes. And I'm a waterfront owner, and waterfront owners pay a disproportionate share of 70% of the property taxes in Granite Shoals. The only way that's going to change is for us to develop economic growth in terms of commercial and industrial, and without a wastewater treatment system, that's not going to happen. It's very important that we build out initially along 1431 so that we can then make that land inviting for people to come in and build businesses, stores, which also then increases work opportunities for citizens in Granite Shoals, particularly in the east side where the low-income residents tend to congregate.
Thank you, candidates, for that response to that question. Now we're moving on to question number two, touching on a somewhat controversial subject. Right now, Granite Shoals is a city that's based on septic, but on the ballot May 14th is a proposition for a wastewater treatment plant. We've already touched on this a little bit with the candidates, but we're going to ask them to specifically state how they feel about the wastewater treatment facility that's proposed in the ballot. First, we'll go to place one incumbent, Shirley King. Ms. King, how do you feel about that deal?
I believe we need to build the new wastewater treatment plant, and that would provide a shopping convenience for our citizens, and it would provide sales tax revenue for the city. And Marble Falls collected $5.8 million this year in sales tax revenue, and the city of Granite Shoals only collected $73,000. If we had more sales tax revenue, we'd be able to do major improvements to our streets. We'd be able to put in new water lines, and we'd be able to do a lot more things for the citizens, and we'd be able to clean up Granite Shoals.
Well, thank you, Ms. King. And Mr. Terry Hartman, place one candidate. Same question to you, sir, about the wastewater treatment facility.
Well, we definitely need a wastewater treatment facility. Where it's located at the moment, I'm not sure of. Though I know we have to have it because, as Ms. King stated, we have to have revenue. We have to equalize out the tax base. That's the important thing, get that tax base equaled out. And right now, as it's been stated, that the waterfront pays the majority of the taxes. And if we can get the sewer treatment plant in, then it will equal out the tax base. That's just how I feel about it.
Well, good, Mr. Hartman. Thank you very much. And now to our place three candidates. First, to Mr. Don Harrison. Mr. Harrison, how do you feel about the wastewater treatment proposition?
I feel that everybody's in favor of a wastewater treatment facility for Granite Shoals. But I also feel that just a couple of city council meetings ago, the engineering firm stated that the wastewater treatment plant would be less expensive if it was put on the city's own property. As it currently stands, phase one will not benefit the majority of the citizens of Granite Shoals. They will be paying for it for 8 to 14 years and not have a sewer hookup. The developers that own the property that they're currently putting on will be on phase one. They will be one of the first ones to get sewer. Now, if it was put back on our property, we could do it less expensive. And it would benefit more of the citizens of Granite Shoals. Thank you.
Good. Well, thank you very much, Mr. Harrison. And Mr. Eric Tanner, also a place three candidate. Your feelings on that issue, sir?
I strongly support the establishment and the construction of the wastewater treatment system. As regards to the location, the land involved in the development agreement between the Barnetts and the city, they are offering a total of 25 acres to the city free, so in essence the city owns that land. It's 15 acres, a total of 40 acres, 15 acres for the plant site and 25 acres for distribution of the wastewater. So I think ownership of the property is really not an issue. It's whether we should build it and where the first emphasis should be. And in my estimation, it should be along 1431 so that we could attract business development, as we talked about in the previous question. That way we can develop commercial property tax, sales tax, as Ms. King has talked about, and begin to ease the burden on the local property taxpayer. Again, nobody will pay for connection fees to the sewer system, and nobody will pay tap fees. They won't pay any service fees until they are connected.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Tanner. And now to question number three. The city of Granite Shoals has some distinct economic differences among its residents. If you were elected to the council, how would you ensure that all those different voices were heard? And again, we'll start with the place one incumbent, Shirley King, please.
I've been a voice for the citizens for many years now. I've fought to keep the water rates as low as possible for the lower income citizens, and I voted for the tax freeze to help alleviate the tax burden on the waterfront property owners and everyone over 65 or handicapped.
Good. Well, thank you very much, Ms. King. And now to your opponent, the same question, Mr. Terry Hartman for place one.
Well, my feelings on that is that Granite Shoals is all of the citizens. It doesn't matter whether you live on the west side, the east side, the north side, or the south side. We are all citizens of Granite Shoals. we all have things that we need in our neighborhoods. One way to do that would be, as I've seen in other cities, town meetings. You know, and get the groups together and talk. We have to go to a church for a town meeting. I mean, there are several places you can have town meetings in Granite Shoals. So I feel that would be a big help, and that would put everything out on the table. Then recommendations can go forward to the city council.
Well, thank you, Mr. Hartman, for that response. And now we're going to toss the question to our place 3 candidates, and we're going to start with Mr. Don Harrison first.
Okay, beside the sewer treatment plant, the other thing that the current city council constantly overlooks, you're not gonna get builders to come in and build that in-between level of housing, that $150,000 to $250,000 homes in single-family residential areas that have somebody running a concrete operation or sawing I-beams next door. For years and years, I've complained. Not one of them have been shut down. It's going to be one of my first things on the agenda, that I'm going to get on the agenda and make city council address it, because that will bring in a lot of people in that in-between group that will help with the tax burden. Some of the people on the waterfront, hey, they're insulated from it. I live a half a block from one of these guys that saws I-beams all day long and has a crew of 6 people working in his backyard. And I can't see friends of mine that want to build a $250,000 house there. And sewer treatment plant, and to clean that up, which I feel has not been addressed, is my answer. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Harrison. And again, that's about having people's voices heard down at City Hall. And so we'll also ask the other place 3 candidate, Mr. Eric Tanner, how he would address that issue.
One of the main ways to address that issue is economic development again in the eastern part of the community. We have over the past several years increased the water supply to that area. We've also paved a number of streets in that area. Is there a lot more to be done? Absolutely, there is. We need to continue to reach out to those folks. My subdivision was only annexed into the city several years ago, and I was one of the few people in our subdivision that actually wanted to do that because we use the city's streets and water systems, and I knew that we would not get back in terms of services what we would pay in taxes, but that's why they call this a community. We have an obligation, those of us who are better off, to contribute more to help bring the eastern side of the city up to the levels of the rest of the city so that we're all in this together and we all prosper together.
Well, good. Thank you, Mr. Tanner. I appreciate that question and that response. Now we come to the segment that we call the wild card question. This is a question that our candidates have not been prepped for. It arises out of discussions back in the newsroom, from our readers and from our viewers. We just want voters to see how the candidates think on their feet. And so here is our wild card question. Candidates, how should Granite Shoals handle the next annexation of Beaver Island and Webb Island in the coming decade? And we will toss the question first to Shirley King, the incumbent for place 1. Ms. King?
We should, I won't be on the council then, I'm sure, and I think it would be up to the councilmen who there at the time, but it will be 7 years before that we can annex them, but I do believe that they should be annexed, the sooner the better.
Okay. Very controversial subject out there in Granite Shoals. And Mr. Hartman, same question to you, sir.
Right, thank you. The problem with it is for 7 years they cannot be annexed, and yet they get all of our services. They get the water, they get the fire, they get EMS, they get all of our services, and when they de-annexed, we lost a large tax base. So hopefully that we can get that tax base back. As Ms. King said, she won't be on the council probably, and I probably won't either. But it's still something that we have to look at, and something that should be voted on. There's no way around that one. You have to vote on that one. Some of them wanted to stay with the city, some of them didn't. So indirectly, they're still part of Granite Shoals. That's it, thank you.
Well, thank you, Mr. Hartman. And now we're going to take the question to our place 3 candidates. We're going to start again with Mr. Don Harrison. Mr. Harrison?
Okay, it is my understanding under the current agreement that Beaver and Webb Island will voluntarily, after 7 years, allow themselves to be re-annexed. the situation arose out of the city not annexing them properly. There was some errors made in the annexation which Beaver Island picked up on, and they used it to their advantage. The problem with the way it works currently is the fact that we stayed in court for 6 years fighting this situation, and we were wrong to start out with. We could have been re-annexing them in a couple of years if we wouldn't have stayed in court. And so I think the problem has solved itself. They're going to voluntarily allow Granite Shoals to annex them in 7 years.
Okay. Well, thank you. Strong opinions. It's always good to hear those opinions. And now, question goes to the other place 3 candidate, Mr. Eric Tanner.
What we've heard here today is people saying that the people of Webb and Beaver Isle get benefits without paying for them. They will be paying higher out-of-city water rates, and as of October 1st, they will have to contract with the city at their cost for fire, police, and EMS protection. And it's also my understanding that the water system, or the wastewater treatment system for those 2 communities is nearing capacity. It wouldn't surprise me to see citizens in that area in the next few years actually petition the city of Granite Shoals to be annexed, particularly if a wastewater treatment system is approved by the voters May 14th.
Well, good. Thank you very much. That's an interesting point. I want to thank all our candidates for the Granite Shoals City Council for being here today on Tribune Talk with Thomas Edwards. We want to thank incumbent place 1, Councilwoman Shirley King. Thank you. Her opponent, Mr. Terry Hartman. And then for place 3, candidates Don Harrison and Mr. Eric Tanner. Thank you all very much. I also want to remind our viewers that we have 2 mayoral candidates who could not be here today, Dennis Meyer and Peggy Metzger, so don't forget them. Remember to go exercise your right to vote on May 14th, and check us out always on www.thepicayuntv.com, as well as on Northland Communications Channel 15. I'm Thomas Edwards for Tribune Talk. Thank you very much. Have a good day.